Hello everyone, how's it going? Dr. Incompetent here, and I'd like to do a tutorial for how I make thumbnails using Photoshop for my gaming channel. I'm going to walk you through two different types of thumbnail, more traditional gaming thumbnails that I've used for years, and then also some thumbnails that I'm starting to experiment with more now that the Generative Fill AI is live on Photoshop's beta. So if you have Photoshop and you go to the Creative Cloud desktop here, you can go into beta apps and make sure you've got the Photoshop beta so that you can use AI and Generative Fill. So if you don't have that, no worries. I'm just going to walk you through it anyway, and there's still so much value in this video for just creating basic thumbnails. So let's dive into Photoshop. Now that I'm in Photoshop, I'm just going to walk you through making a really basic gaming thumbnail for a Let's Play that you're going to do on any game, and I have an example here of Core Keeper that I did. I'm also going to be showing you some other examples. This is a guide series for Hollow Knight that I did. And then this is a thumbnail that I used for the video I made recently about how to grow your gaming channel. And this was done using largely AI Generative Fill. And we'll talk about that next. But first, I want to just walk you through making a very simple thumbnail like this. Of course, you'll be tweaking this to your liking, but I watched a great video about how to make thumbnails when I first got started that transformed the way I was doing thumbnails at the very beginning of my YouTube journey, and I tried to find it on YouTube so I could give this awesome person props for teaching me how to do this, and I cannot find the video. It's years old at this point, and I don't remember the guy's name, and it was just super helpful. So if I ever figure that out, I just want to say thank you to this unnamed person. But I got many of these techniques from a video that I watched on YouTube, and then I kind of transformed them into my own thing for the channel by adding my own sensibilities. So let's talk about how to just make a basic gaming thumbnail. What you want to do is first just create a new file in Photoshop. So I'm just going to go say create new, and then when you make a new document, you need to go over here, and you're not going to use this preset. You're just going to go to pixels, and YouTube thumbnails need to be 1280 by 720p. You can do different resolutions than that if you like, but that is what I do. So you're just going to want to go ahead and change this to 1280 by 720, and if you want to orient this as landscape and you want your resolution to be 300, that's fine. That's what I do. And then you just say create, and you're going to get a blank document that looks like this. It just has a white background because that's what we selected. Now, I am, by the way, I've got a few files open on Photoshop. I'm using the beta, so you'll see this context menu that appears down here. You might not see that if you're just running regular Photoshop. And I'm using the Essentials workspace layout, so your screen might not look identical to mine, but we'll be fine. All right, so what you do from this point is you need to get an image to use as your baseline. Now, I'm going to talk to you in a moment about this template that I have, because one of the key things I want to do in this video, in addition to showing you how to make good gaming thumbnails, is show you how to have an efficient workflow so that you can replicate this process. So let's go back to our blank background. All we have done is set the resolution properly. And now we need to put an image on top of this that we're going to use as the base for our thumbnail. And what I do is I go to Google. So I jump over to Google, and what I search for would be the name of the game that I'm looking to play, and then HD wallpaper. That's kind of where I start. So let's say, I want to do something on Zelda, the Zelda that just came out. So I could type in Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, right? And then I just say HD wallpaper. Now you can get 4K wallpaper, you can get other wallpaper that you want, but what this does is put you in a place to get an image that is probably the right aspect ratio for a good thumbnail, because you don't want to get a Steam image, or many of the assets you can find are way too small for you to actually use effectively. So you definitely don't want something like that. And once you have searched here, click on images, and you'll see that there's all these awesome Zelda images obviously already out there. Now, here's what you're looking for. You're looking for something that looks like an asset that was created by Nintendo, because in that case, you will be able to use it without retribution for copyright violation, because most of the time game companies, they want their game to be promoted, and so they create these assets intentionally so that they will be distributed and used, and you won't have any problems with that. If you use somebody's custom wallpaper that they've created on their own, you might run into some problems. So I just look for like the most common one right here. So when I look at this image right here, I open it up. It's from My Nintendo, but it's got like the kind of game art and then this bigger piece here, but you can see in the image that this aspect ratio is no good. Like, this file is tiny. So I'm kind of like, well, maybe not. Let's look at this one. That's not great. This one looks pretty good. All right. And it's in a higher resolution. So I look at it and I don't think somebody has custom made this. I think this is some kind of asset from Nintendo. But this one, no, that's terrible resolution. It looks bad. Sometimes it takes a second for you to scare up a good image. And then now we finally found one. This is perfect. This is 1080p. So when you find an image that you like, you don't really need to click on it in Google Images. This looks like it's got the official logo and it's a screenshot of the game. So I don't think anybody could even get you for copyright on something like this anyway. So what I'm going to do is just right click this, and I'm going to ask to save the image. And then I'm just going to save this image. You can see I've already downloaded some assets here for things that I was looking for, mainly PNG logos and game things. And I'll just say save it. And then we've got this file saved, and we'll see if we can bring it into Photoshop. So I took this file from my downloads folder and I just dragged it directly from that onto the background in Photoshop. And when you import an image into Photoshop in that fashion, it looks like this. It has the transform box up, and it automatically tries to size it based on the dimensions of your image. And it looks pretty good. I'm not going to do anything with this. I like how it's done. It's centered. Everything is great. So you just push enter and it will set it down. And so now above our background layer in the bottom right corner, you'll see we just have a background layer, and then we have this image. We now have the basis for a pretty good thumbnail. But we need to add some things. I'm going to go ahead and just push T to use the text tool. And I'm going to type, and I have Bauhaus 93. That is the font that I always use for stuff on this channel for my Let's Plays. I always write Let's Play in this particular font, and this is something that you do with your branding. You pick out a font that you like. There's so many fonts, and you can scour the internet for good fonts that you think will be readable. And then what I like to do is stick with a font as much as possible to create a stylistic consistency across my videos so that it helps with branding, recognition, and people can just kind of spot your stuff based on you using a font. But feel free to experiment if you're early in the game. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to write Let's Play right there. Now you can't see it because it's white text. And I'm going to push V to turn on the select tool, and you can see that I can like drag this around, and you can see it better when I put it up in the sky. And this layer, when I pushed T and just started writing, it put a new layer on top of the Zelda image. Photoshop always stacks things with layers, and if you want Let's Play to be hidden, you can just drag it and like put it below the Zelda image for some reason, and then you can't see it. But of course we don't want that. You can also just click this eyeball in the bottom right corner to show or hide a layer, and that'll become useful in a moment. But for now, I have this text layer. Now, I don't like just plain white text, and I want it to be bigger than that. So if I select it with the select tool, you'll see that it opens up this blue box with these kind of white square anchor points around it, and this is our transform. And if you grab the bottom corner and just drag this out, you can make this bigger or smaller. And you do not want to hold shift or anything while you're doing this, because if you just grab the corner with the transform tool and make this bigger, you will transform this and make it larger or smaller to scale, so everything will be uniformly scaled. If instead you hold shift and like grab the side and smoosh it up, it will not be scaled. You can stretch it or whatever, and I'm just going to push Control Z to undo that. If I do it now though without shift, you see how it gets, by scrunching it in, the top and the bottom and the left and the right, it all kind of scales uniformly, and that's usually how I like to do things. You can get some fun effects if you want to transform text by holding shift and like stretching it out, you know, tall like that, or you can even hold Control and grab the corner and like tilt it around and just play and do all kinds of fun stuff, stretching it on diagonals or whatever you want to do. But I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to leave it pretty normal. My philosophy about this a lot of the times is just to keep it simple, because I need to make a lot of thumbnails, and too much craziness and busyness not only is slow to create, but it can also just be too much for people to look at, and it can bog down your image. So you have to think about how much text, how much am I putting on this. Right now though, all I have is just a standard Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom wallpaper, which we can use, that has Let's Play on it. So it's really not that much. But Let's Play is plain. It's just this white text. So how do I punch this up? Well, what I always do is I double click the text layer where it says Let's Play in the bottom right in the layers panel. And now when I do that, it opens up the layer style menu. And from here, we can get into doing some really cool stuff. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go down to gradient overlay and click on this. And then this turns on a gradient. And I'm going to actually say, okay, good, gradient, but we're on blending options. I'm going to leave blending options as is. I'm just going to then left click on the gradient overlay tab. And from here, I'm going to leave all of this as is for the time being. And I'm just going to go into the gradient drop down box. I'm going to click this. And I'm going to go into orange, because on my channel I always use orange for stuff, and I use this, something like this if I want. This looks pretty good. It's got this kind of really, really eye-catching orange to yellow gradient, and I just say okay, and already the text looks a little bit better. But as you can see on, for example, an image like this, my gradient is slightly different, and it's got more going on. So we can work on transforming this to look even better. So I'm going to double click the layer again, open up the layer style panel. The next thing I like to do is bevel emboss. I just check this, and then kind of what it's doing is it's rounding out the edges and making it look like it's three-dimensional, like it's got some depth to it. And you've smoothed away and beveled the edges, and it's embossed like it's rising up out of the image. Then I always add a stroke, so I'm just going to click on stroke, and I don't do anything to bevel and emboss. You can of course click on this and change all of these settings and experiment if you want, but I am going to go into the stroke panel and mess around with this. So we have a choice, like, do we think that a black stroke looks good given this background that we're using, it looks okay, but is it too thick? Do we want to say, instead of 8 pixels thick, what about if it was 6 pixels thick? I actually like that better. So now I'm changing the stroke width or thickness to just be 6 pixels. Not quite as big. You can either use the slider or just type in there to change it. We definitely want it to be on the outside. You can change the opacity, but I want it to be full, and I want it to be black. You could maybe make it white to see how that looked if you wanted, but I'm okay with this being black. Then the next thing I always like to do is go down to the bottom, and I'm going to turn on a shadow. Now, I like to have a shadow underneath this text because it adds layers, it adds visual richness and depth to your production, and it looks like you've kind of like added this on top, but the way that the shadow right now looks is not ideal. It's too big. So first things first, I'm going to just keep it on this blend mode, but I'm going to change the distance. I'm going to make it a little closer. I'm going to decrease the spread significantly, and I'm going to decrease the size of this. I'm going to change the angle so it's kind of coming like this, as if the sun is over here. You know, I like that fine. And then this looks a little bit better. I don't want it to be real wild, but you can change the size or the spread to your liking. But now we're getting better. You could see how much more expensive and nice this looks. One of the things I always try to do with my thumbnails is make it look just a little bit more luxe or expensive than some of the real low resolution, low quality thumbnails out there. It's possible if you have Photoshop, but you can also do this with cheaper photo editing options, of course. So now we've got a stroke, a gradient overlay, a drop shadow, and I'm pretty good. You could add, if you want, an outer glow. If you want to give it even more stuff going on here, and you can, change the opacity, and you can say make it bigger and make it larger like this. If you want to have this like real bright white, you can dim it down and have this like real exciting glow. I don't want a glow, but you can have that. You can also do some more depth with like inner shadow if you want, or inner glow if you want to make it light up or whatever. But I'm just going to leave it like this. And then now I've got this nicer looking text, and I'm just going to use the selection tool and drag this around. Notice how when I drag the text around, these purple lines or these magenta lines appear. These are helping you to orient things with respect to other objects it sees on the screen. So for example, like I don't want to make it align to anything except the center, so that when you drag it and you see this perfectly horizontal right in the center magenta line, you know you're in the center. And I'm just going to drag this down because I can tell the Legend of Zelda like kind of circular ring icon is right in the center. I'm going to drag this down a little bit more, and I'm going to put it near the bottom, but I'm going to move it down just a bit more. Like this. I think that looks fine. So now I have this text layer, and you can put it wherever you want. Like I see the text in the center, and I think that my own text should go there with it, so it's real clear. But you could, if you wanted, you put it up in the corner or in the bottom corner. Here's a tip: don't put very much over here in the bottom right corner, because on YouTube, anything in the bottom right corner will be obscured, because that's where they put the time, like how long your video is. When people are scrolling on mobile, the time will override and just go on top of what you put in the bottom right corner. So be careful of what goes over there, because it will be hidden. You can put it up here, wherever. I like it right here. I think it looks fine. So now we've got this text on here. It says let's play. But another thing I always do is I add some branding onto my thumbnail, and my branding is usually this, kind of like blue bearded head with the sunglasses. So once you have an asset like this, I have this stored on my computer, of course, but if you're transferring between files, Something cool you can do on Photoshop, you can just select this and I can just Control C to copy it, and then I could go back over to this file and just Control V and just paste it right down onto this. And I could just move it over here if I want. And yeah, this is fine. Yeah, make it a little bit bigger. Let me just put it up there in the corner. Looks good. I could also copy this text if I wanted to, but I don't believe I need to. All right, let's go over here and let's see. Now that we've got this here, we've got this over here, what else do we want to do? Well, what I do is what I learned from the video, and I punch this up by adding a little bit of shadow and light to this. So I'm going to kind of scroll out, and you can just hold Alt and use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out on the canvas. And I'm going to just kind of select that, and I'm going to add a new layer by just pushing in the bottom right corner. I'm just going to push the plus button on the layer panel to just add a new layer. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to push B to use the brush tool. And on the top of the screen, you're going to see the different modes of this. And I want this. This is fine, normal mode. And I'm going to select this, and I'm going to say, I want an enormous brush. I want, no, bigger. I want a brush that's 1,000 pixels, like this. That's great. And then you could see now when I blast this, I'm covering it up with these big black dots. But I'm going to just Z, 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 like that. Just Control Z to undo. And I'm going to, I've got black selected, so what I'm going to do is just put my brush way, 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 way to the edge of the image, starting about right here. And I'm going to hit the edge of this. I'm just very lightly clicking the left click all the way around in different places on the bottom edge and on the right and left edge to create a shadow that goes kind of in a U shape. And now I've got this shadow layer. I'm going to double click the layer and change it, and I'm going to call it shadows. Now I'm going to take this layer that we made, and I'm actually going to slide it. I'm going to hold left click and drag it all the way so it's just over top of the Legend of Zelda trailer. And I'm going to put it lower so that the text and stuff are on top of this. I'm just going to push V so that we're, just having the selection tool active. And now when I look at this image, I've put some shadows on the outside. And I'm going to add a new layer. I'm actually going to drag this layer all the way to the top. And I'm going to go back to the brush tool with B, but I'm going to flip and use white. And I'm going to just put, like right here, a spotlight on the top of the image. And now I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So what we're doing is we're putting these shadows around the edge, and then we're putting kind of a spotlight on the top. And I will double click the layer here. Oh, not that part of the layer, but where the name is, so I can change this. I'm just going to call it light, like that. And then now what we've done is we have some light and shadow. And what this does for you with your image is it kind of creates an effect with lighting that your thumbnail looks like a button for people to press. It's like shiny, like it's kind of rising up, and it looks like this screen, this button that people want to dive into and press. It's just more visually appealing. But if you feel like you don't want to do it, then you don't have to. But also the light's a little bright. So you just double click on this, and then you get the layer style. And with blending options, you can just drag this bar right here for the opacity and just tone this down a little bit. Let's just tone it down to like 56, something like that. So it's still there, but it's not quite as noticeable. And then if you think the shadows are a little bit too strong, you can do the same thing. You can just walk those back a little bit. I mean, you can walk them back all the way, but I like having them there. It doesn't make sense, of course, with the sun rising over these mountains, like to have shadows and light that are not obeying that. So you can shift your light over to try to match that light source if you want, but I don't bother with that. I just still create some independent lighting source, irrespective of the image and its own lighting, to make my thumbnail look like it's a button that people want to press and kind of click on, like you're inviting that with the shadows and the light. The final thing I do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to then on this layer drag it all the way to the top right below the light. So on this new layer, I'm going to push G to get the paint bucket tool, and I'm going to just click on the image, and you can see now it's just all black. There's the light up there because it's the only layer that's above this full black layer that I've filled in with the paint bucket. I'm going to double click on this layer, and I'm going to go to Fill Opacity in Advanced Blending on the Blend options. I'm going to turn this all the way to 0. And then I'm going to go to Stroke. I'm going to turn on a stroke. And you see how now I get this like awesome black border all the way around. And I'm actually going to adjust this. I want this to be a little bit smaller. Let's just say 10 pixels looks good. By the way, I'm getting some weird artifacts, like where it's not actually representing what we see. All you have to do is use Alt to kind of zoom in and out, and it'll clean up any mistakes. But I'm going to double click on this again. I like the stroke, but what I always do is I take the stroke and I make it almost transparent. Like you can't really see it, but it's sort of there, you know, like something like this, perhaps. 16% opacity. So now you get this rough idea of an edge to this, and then the lighting. And then you have, I actually think our logo is a little bit too large. I'm going to double click on this layer, and I'm going to call it border, okay, like this. And I'm going to drag it down, and we'll just put it right above the shadows so I can easily interact with these images. By the way, if you have a layer that's like huge and you want to try to click on the text, but you can't because you have this layer that it keeps targeting when you try to use the selection tool, you can always just lock a layer with the lock icon, and then even if you click, it won't target it. So even if it's a layer that's above a layer you want to work on, if you lock it, you don't have to worry about that. All right, and then this looks pretty good so far, but there's still some things that you can do. So another idea for making this look nice is to go down, and you can actually click on this layer, which is the Legend of Zelda trailer image or whatever, and you're going to go to Filter on the top ribbon, and you're going to say Camera Raw Filter. And this is going to open up the Camera Raw Filter. I actually have it on my other monitor, so let me drag it over so you can see it. And it looks like this. And it shows you the image, and then it gives you like some really intense sliders that you can use to change the balance, the color, the tint, the highlight, the exposure, the contrast, all kinds of things with this image. Now, I don't go crazy on this, but you can mess around with it all you like. But what I enjoy doing is I'm just going to take the exposure, and I'm going to turn it up a little bit, and I'm then going to turn the contrast up also. Just slide it to the right, have these being positive numbers. I'm not going to mess with the highlights, the shadows, the white, or the black, but I will bump the texture, bump the clarity, bump the dehaze a bit. And then this is where you really want to get intense, is with the vibrance and the saturation. What I think you're trying to do here, if you want, with vibrance and saturation on your image, is make it look even more colorful, like sickly sweet, just bursting with color. So I'm going to say okay. And then now the image is more vibrant. It's stronger. The contrast is stronger. It's a little bit brighter. And I like it because I feel like, what are you trying to do with your thumbnail? You're trying to stand out. You're trying to catch people's eye. A lot of the times when you get wallpaper, the image can be almost muted because it's supposed to be a background for your screen. And they will tone down a lot of the coloring and the brightness, the contrast, the vibrance and saturation. So if you boost that up a little bit, it can just give you that extra punch to help everything come together. So this is what our image looks like. Now we're zoomed in on it pretty significantly, but you have to scroll or zoom way out and imagine how big would this be on somebody's desktop, and how big would this be on mobile? What do I need to do to make this still look good in these different viewing angles? So what I always do is I make it, and then I will test out what it looks like on my own in different formats to see how I like the spacing, the size, because you can always change your thumbnail once you've posted the video. You can just upload a new one. Now, when you are happy with this, and you can spend hours tinkering with all these settings, messing around with the text, doing more than this, of course, you can simply go over here. And what I do is I go to File, and then you're going to go Export, and you want to export it, do a quick export as a PNG. This is the best way to get this out so that you have a file that is not so huge that you can't actually use it. I believe that YouTube will not let you upload a thumbnail that's bigger than a megabyte or something like that. So if you got like a super high resolution wallpaper online and you try to use that with some other stuff, it might just be too big. But if you export it as a PNG, you are usually fine. If that doesn't work, you can export it as a JPEG or something. Try to make it even smaller, but usually that works for me. So I like to just quick export as a PNG, save it, and I'm done. So this is like a very simple Let's Play. Now, I will show you one more thing. Something else you can do instead of just searching for a HD wallpaper of the game to find like the most generic promotional game image out there is you can look for a game's press kit. So I just typed in Satisfactory press kit, different game, and I Googled it, and you could see that Satisfactory itself on their website, they have a press kit. Most big games, even small games, people know that you need a press kit. A press kit is a host of assets that you can use if you're writing a review or you're making a post or you're doing anything on social media or making YouTube thumbnails about the game. They're like official images and files that you can use, and you have full licenseship to do that. So you can just freely use these. So if I click on this and go to the Satisfactory press kit, I can go down and you can download the press kit itself, actually. You can click this and then, it goes to, a lot of the times they'll just share a drive with you. Here we go. Like for update 7, they have logo and key art, and you can find a press kit image that's in 1080p. So it has the logo on it, and you have it right here. So there's this image that you can just download this and use this for Satisfactory as your thumbnail. Just write Let's Play, put your logo, or write whatever you want, like episode 1, or whatever you want to have on here. So this is something that you can use as well. Another thing that you can get is you'll find that usually, yeah, here we go. You can search for either in Google Images or in press kits, you can find just the logo itself as a PNG, which is like a transparent file. You see this checkerboard pattern behind it. This means it's transparent. So if I were to drag this onto my file, there'd be no background. It would just be these graphics. And I can use this and put it on like a screenshot that I have from the game or some other representation so that people know it's Satisfactory or whatever game I'm playing, and it's official, and I can use these logos. So I do this all the time. If you have a really good screenshot or you want to make your own thumbnail for something, you can then pull in the logo to give it that sense so people know what this is. Like, what are you representing? What is this game that you're playing? So you can just save this. I'll actually just go back to this, and I'm just going to click download, and I can scan it and I can download it, and then we've got it. And then I'm going to go back to Photoshop. And then once I get this in Photoshop, you can see it's enormous. I need to transform it. So I'll just kind of, make it a little bit smaller or whatever. And here we go. And I could just put this wherever I want, push enter, and then now I've got this logo that I can use. Now, just like anything, which I always do with these, is I double click on it, and then I'm going to bevel it, and then I can put a shadow on it, and I can even make it glow if I want, and I can, put a stroke around it, but that usually looks terrible. That's actually on the inside. Put it on the outside. I could do that, but I don't want that, and I don't want the glow. But, you can just mess with adding things to this. This shadow is too significant. I'm going to turn down the opacity just to make it not as visible, and you have a nice little logo that you could put somewhere if you wanted. All right, so this is kind of talking about how to make just like a basic Let's Play image, and this is what I do. I search for some game asset, either from a press kit or from HD wallpaper. I get it, I use that as the foundation, and then I put some text on top, and I'm good to go. I Then for workflow, what I would do is you export this file as a PNG, but then you save this as a PSD or a Photoshop file so that you can open this with all of the layers intact and you can edit it. And then if you wanted to make this a different game, you have this file. All you need to do, you already have the shadows layer, you already have the border layer, you already have your let's play text, you already have your logo if you want, like I have, and then you have your light coming in. So if we wanted to, you can just drag another image onto this, and let me show you how to do that. So I just brought in this image from the game Wall World, and I dragged it in, and I push enter, and it looks good, except if I go to the top of my layer panel in the bottom right, you can see the problem is it's on the top. So I need to then drag this down on the layer ordering and put it right above The Legend of Zelda. And now I have a thumbnail for Wall World. I have the border, I have the shadows. I can click on this layer and adjust it with the camera raw filter if I want. I can resize this text, now that it's, this is a little bit of a different situation. So I can kind of just make this a little bit bigger and then, put this here if I want. And good to go. I feel like, okay, this looks like a nice image and I would be ready to go with another thing. And then all I need to do is just like hide this layer and hide this layer and then just drag in more. And I've got this template that I can use for workflow and efficiency. Now, next I want to talk about how I did this particular thumbnail. So by the way, if you haven't seen this video yet and you're trying to grow your gaming channel, I highly recommend you check it out. I'll link it in the description below. It's a very long and detailed lecture about everything you need to know to grow your gaming channel, everything that I learned over the past few years of going from 0 to 10,000 subscribers. And for this, the difficulty I ran into is, what do you do when you're trying to make a video for your gaming channel, but it's not about a particular game? Now you have to get into this business where it's like, well, I need to use a clip art file or something. But the problem is I don't want to pay for an image. I don't want to use a copyrighted image. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get any kind of copyright bans or strikes on my channel because I'm using images without permission. So how do I make my own image? I'm not an artist. Like, I can't draw something on my own. Well, what you can do if you have Photoshop and download the beta is use Generative Fill, the AI features, to help you create a thumbnail. So I'll show you this image. If I hide the logo for thumbs and I hide these headphones, you see that it has this like really ugly guy's face that's right here that is weird looking. I don't want that, but I don't have to worry about the face because I'm going to use my logo in a kind of funny way as the face. And by the way, these headphones that are on the head here, that was also, I can't draw headphones, so I just had the generative fill. I just said draw headphones, and then I just put them on top of this. I made another image and had them there. You can see I have the pair right here, but I had to edit it slightly. Anyway, so what did I do to get this image? I'll show you. I went way down here, and I was on this layer right here. Now, what I'm going to do is a little trick that you can use where you hold Alt and you click the eyeball on the layer. And what it will do is hide every layer on your image except the layer that you've selected. So this is what the AI generated. And if I click on this, you can see the prompt that I gave the AI. I said, can I see a person with a headset in a gaming chair playing a game and being excited in the style of a cartoon? And this is what it gave me. Actually, this is one of the images it gave me. It also gave me like this lady and this guy. And so of these three options, I chose this one. I was like, this is cool. I like the colors. And you just have to kind of roll with the fact that the AI is wonky. This is actually supposed to be a person back here. And it was really creepy looking. I didn't like it. So what I did was I just edited it out with generative fill. Also, you see how this head is not the same head that I showed you a moment ago, which was right here. But the reason I couldn't use this head is because it was too big. And when I tried to put my logo over it, I couldn't cover up this guy's hat. So what I did was, you guessed it, generative fill. So let's talk about how to do that and how to change it from the ground up. So I'm going to just go back to this blank template that I have called gaming tutorial. I've got the light, I've got a logo, I've got a border, I've got the shadows, and on the bottom layer, okay, I'm just going to select the bottom layer, and I'm going to push Control A to select everything. Once you're on a layer and you push Control A and you've got everything selected, the context box at the bottom will open up and ask you, do you want to do generative fill? And you click on this and it gives you the prompt window. And from here, you can describe anything that you want to see and it will fill up this whole canvas with that. So in this prompt, I'm actually going to try to brainstorm and make a thumbnail for the video that I'm making right now, which is trying to help people understand how to make thumbnails using Photoshop for their gaming channel. So an idea I have is a person who is painting something at an easel or something like that. So maybe I want somebody with a paintbrush and they're painting and it's an image of somebody painting so it looks like they're doing a thumbnail. So I can say, in this text box, a man who is happy painting at an easel. So I just filled the rest of this in so you didn't have to listen to me type. But I said, a man who is happy painting at an easel with a paintbrush in a room with a computer on the desk and a window. And I have no idea what this is going to give me. So I'm just going to click generate and see what it comes up with to see where we need to go with the prompt. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to come across and even really what I want. So this is AI. You're going to get a really weird looking person, but this is definitely, I mean, look at this. This is a guy with a paintbrush in a room with windows painting at an easel. So is this. He's got the computer in the background. No one knows what he's doing with that brush. It's mysterious. And then here's a guy who is also happy painting, but then there's like a random paintbrush and there's an extra easel. So these are a little bit creepy, which they always are. But in my case, I don't have to worry about their face because I'm going to put my logo on top and cover it up. But what I've also noticed about AI stuff, it's super fun to do, but you need to kind of say, all right, photorealistic might not be the style that I want. So instead, I could say in the style of a cartoon and get something that's a little bit maybe less terrifying. Or at least if it's scary, it'll be a cartoon. So it's thinking. And, oh, interesting. All right, there's somebody. And there's a really happy person right there. And, oh, this one's really good. Here's somebody who is painting. And look at the masterpiece that they've created over here. So funny. But there it is. So, you know, we might say, okay, I like this one, right? And I'm going to drag this generative layer down under the shadows so that it gets the full treatment. And it's got, you know, the border. I'm going to show these other layers like this. I'm going to turn off my logo for a moment. So let's say I like this. Let's say I'm happy with where we're at. This is a good start. But the cool thing about the generative AI is that you can tweak this if there's something that you don't like. So now I can put anything I want over here. I could actually put a thumbnail and that would look pretty good, right? But let's just, for example, I'm going to grab the lasso tool over here by just pushing L or clicking on the lasso. And I'm just going to, you know, drag a rough outline around this canvas that he's kind of working on and select that. And I'm going to say generative fill, and I'm going to click generate again. And what it's going to do is take that area that I've selected and change it. So you see how it's changed the canvas to like look like this big green box or whatever alien language this is, or just a blank one. You know, and I could pick any of these now. Now I've got a blank canvas. That's cool. And you can actually do this to change anything. Like if you don't like this guy's head, you could just use the lasso and say generative fill and generate, and you're getting new images that will be a head that will go on top of this dude. Now, of course, I don't care because I'm going to be altering it. I like that one, but you get 3 options. You could do just no eyeballs and, you know, even stranger. So you have like this completely nondescript one like that. Now these layers are going way up high, so I'm going to bring them down like this so that they obey the stuff. Now, you can see it's not perfect. There's like a little bit of a blend problem in the background around this head, but I don't care about that. Like, I'm fine that it's not perfect. I just have this, look at the coloring on this image. It's really bright, it's interesting, and I think I can maybe work with this. I'm going to take my logo right away, and we're going to be, of course, you know, be putting it on top of this guy's head. Now, my head's going to be cut off because there's not enough space, and that's a problem because I don't like that I can't see the top of my head, and I kind of want to put a beret on my head to make it like a silly I'm an artist kind of thing. So how can I do that? Well, check this out. I can grab all of these layers. I'm going to select all of these layers, and I'm actually just going to move them down here, and I'm going to click away, and I'm just going to let it repopulate all of them. And now I'm going to hide my logo. You see I have this, and I'm going to hide the border, and I'm going to hide the light. I'm going to hide all the layers, the shadows. See how there's this big white bar up here now? I've moved the image down. And what I can do is I can just take the rectangle tool and I can select this whole section where it's empty. And you guessed it, I can just generative fill. And I can fill this in, and it will attempt to draw something that looks like what's already here and match so that I have an extension upward that makes sense. And I get some choices, right? I could choose this one. I could choose this one. I like this one because I like that the easel stops. Like this one, it's like the easel top goes forever, which is a bit strange. This one, actually, no, I like this one better because I like that the window doesn't go indefinitely. And if I don't like that the easel keeps going, I can just get rid of it. But for now, you know, I can... No, I hate it. All right, so I'm just going to be like, hey, get out of here. And I'm just going to say generative fill. And this is kind of how you could tweak the AI image that you get. That's actually going to be good enough because I don't want the image to be quite this high. So I'm going to select these layers, control click for this. And then I'm going to bring this up like this a little bit. I don't need it to be... There we go. I actually might bring it up and leave it a little bit more. I like the lightness on the bottom, but there we go. I like this positioning better. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. And then I'm going to turn on the logo and we can move it here. But of course, these layers are in the way. They need to come down. And then, yep, there I am painting. That looks good. And I could just kind of tilt my head a little bit with the transform tool, slide it like that a little bit, move it over. Yes, there we go. Now, what if I want, like I said, to put like a beret up here? I don't know how this is going to look. We've got... Now, these are all terrible. Well, I came up with this one, and it's kind of close. I'm still not sure if I am going to use this or if I even need to use this, but it's pretty cool. All right, so I've got a beret on. I could generate, and you could just keep clicking on generate to make more and more berets if you want. You can just, look how many I made, and you can just keep making more and more and more to see if you get the one that you like. Now, from this point, what I'm actually going to try to do is bring in one of the thumbnails that I've made in the past and see if I can put it on this easel to be clever. All right, so I dragged in a Valheim thumbnail that I have because this is a series on my channel that I've been playing for a long time. It's a game that people will recognize as well. So I can put this and try to put it on the canvas, but it's going to require me to do some really funky transform where I'm going to need to fit these corners like they are on these corners on the canvas, like this kind of. And it's not an easy proposition. Actually, well, I mean, this is almost working. let's play with this a little bit more. The problem is the canvas itself is like not square, so it's wonky. So I'm just holding control and grabbing these corners and trying to situate them in a manner that makes some kind of sense. I'm not even going to bother with the three-dimensionality of the canvas anymore because I want the image to be readable. That actually looks good. That looks like he's going to paint that. So now I have this on there. It's kind of clever. Now I'm going to bring in some text, and we need to think about where do we want to put text on this. What I think I'll do is go over here to this image, and this had some text. Here we go. The word subscribers is about right. So I'm going to just grab this, Control C. I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to just paste it on here. So now we have a new layer. It's like way at the top, and I'll bring this layer down along with Valheim down, and then this layer actually needs to come down. Oh, but it's got to go over my logo. Yeah, there you go. All right, better. And then I'm going to change the text. I'm just going to double click on it and select it, and we're going to write how to make, and then I like that. So I'm going to just copy this and put it over here. And now if you have a text layer that you like, you can just hold Alt and then drag it to copy it. And then you can just say, okay, good, I like that one. And I'll just double click it, how to make thumbnails. And I can put this up here kind of, and then there you go. How to make thumbnails for your gaming channel. Now this is a start. I don't know if I'm going to go with this yet or how I'm going to arrange the text on this. I could very well maybe slide this further to the right so that I have some more space over here on the left to work with or something like that. Okay, before I go, I actually thought I would show you what I have decided to use as the almost finished product for this thumbnail. I have changed some things, rearranged the text, and also messed with the body of the painter itself. And I want to talk to you about that. I didn't record all of the tinkering because I spent a lot of time going through. It would just take up too much time, but here's what I did mainly. So first of all, I decided that I wanted to match one of the body to the skin tone of my logo for consistency. And to do that, if you ever want to alter the thumbnail that you've generated with AI, all you have to do is go down to the generative layer, the bottom layer that you're doing most of your work on, and then you're going to need to rasterize that layer, because if you don't rasterize the layer, it will not allow you to use the brush tool on it. So I push B, I pull out the brush, and you can see I could paint on this if I want. I'm going to undo it. And when you go to use the brush on a non-rasterized layer, it will give you a dialog pop-up box that will say, hey, you have to rasterize this first. And it's fine once you're done overall with the image. You can just say, okay, great, rasterize it. And then you can go ahead and use the brush. So all I did was I pushed I to use the eyedropper, and I clicked on this blue on the face right here to get this color. And I pushed B for the brush, and then now I am painting in this color. So I just kind of painted over the skin on the legs and on the arms and hands and stuff so that we would match. And now I actually like that it looks consistent. Now the next things that I did that you can see, let me see if I can select, here we go. This was what the paintbrush looked like before. And I decided that it looked a little awkward. The hand was weird. The paintbrush was weird. So I just used the lasso, circled that, and then I just had it generate a hand holding a paintbrush, and I got some different options, and I like this one a good bit. It actually, you could see the hand, and I did this after I had painted the body so that the AI Generative Fill automatically just matched the skin tone of the blue, made a more realistic looking hand, and a better paintbrush. So I like that. And then this one right here, I don't know what I was holding initially. I just thought it kind of looked cool, but it looks almost like a light bulb or a shell or something. I don't know what that is, but it's not paint related. So I told the AI to give me a brown painting palette with circles of paint on it, and it did. Now, this took a long time. Some words are hard for the AI, so I had to generate this again and again and changed the prompt to get it to work, but now it much more visibly looks like a painting palette, and you've got a brush here, so I think that looks great. And then I did finally get a pretty good beret. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this yet, but I've got it. And how I did that was I just used the lasso on a bigger area. I think I tried to make it too small of a beret, but once I selected a much larger area around the head, I was able to make a more realistic looking beret. And now I have a thumbnail that I'm happy with. So just remember, if you want to use the brush or the pencil tool or anything else to affect this, you're going to need to rasterize that layer that you're going to work on, and it will automatically ask you to do that when you try to use any of the tools on it. And then you can always lasso and edit whatever portions of the figure that you are not happy with. And it just takes a little bit more time than I wanted to spend on the video tweaking it, but we got there, and I like this result even better. So everyone, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it to be helpful and give you some advice about how to do a basic thumbnail that just uses either the game assets or some kind of promotional material from either a press kit or a wallpaper, something that you can use without any kind of copyright issues. And then if you want to make a more involved AI descriptive fill thumbnail, this also walks you through all the steps to do that, putting on text, having the lighting change, using the camera raw filter. And if you have any questions, please put those in the comments below. Obviously, this isn't a guide that's going to tell you exactly how to use Photoshop if you've never used it before. It expects some kind of knowledge, but if you have any basic questions about Photoshop, I'd be also happy to help you answer those below and help you making some better thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Take care.